Episode 124. Overseas Footage.
"Stranger!" Mrs. Cox screamed. "If it were not for Serena, my Lila would have been your wife. She wouldn't have suffered so much."
Jake narrowed his eyes, gazing at Mrs. Cox and commenting,
"So, the thick skin is also a hereditary character. I've learned something today."
Both Lila and Mrs. Cox had changed their expressions. Michael Cox's face darkened as he exclaimed,
"Jake, we come here today to ask for an explanation. Don't change the subject." "Such a coincidence. I also want an explanation from you."
Jake rolled up the report in his hands and sneered.
"Your daughter has committed libel and tried to frame my wife. She also caused the abortion of my child and arranged for my wife being hit in public. Now, she is carrying a random baby and claiming it is mine, trying to ruin the relationship between me and my wife. Shouldn't you give me an explanation for all that?"
He had sought justice already, not only bankrupting Fred Jones, but also shutting down many businesses that Lila and the Cox family had invested in, making them regret what they had done. However, since they had come to his family, Jake was more than happy to claim more debts. Michael Cox did not expect to be blamed by Jake. Hearing his accusations, Mr. Cox looked at Lila. Noticing that her father had wavered, Lila immediately gritted her teeth and cried,
"Jake, you know very well it is yours. If it was not you, do you think I would sleep with anyone? If this is not your baby, do you think I would keep it? You know very well that I like you. I even like you enough to do this, Brother Jake."
"Then let's do a blood test."
Jake's face darkened, not responding to her words, but looking to his father.
"A DNA test would prove your son's innocence."
No one would be willing to be accused of something so serious. Carson Robinson knew his son very well. Jake was not someone who would opt out of his responsibilities. If Jake said he did not do it, that would be the truth. However,
"How do you explain the polygraph test?"
Michael Cox bristled.
"A woman is willing to bear your child, but you did not admit it, but instead humiliated her using obscene accusations. Jake Robinson, you are an animal. Then what do you call someone who begged to be with an animal in the first place?"
Mr. Cox was rendered speechless by Jake. Shuddering, it took him a while to say,
"You are simply a terrible man. The facts are right in front of you, and you have the guts to deny them. Do you think my daughter is a pushover?"
Jake sneered sarcastically as he slowly said,
"I don't say it just like that. I have evidence."
Seeing how confident Jake was, Lila felt a bit anxious. Feeling a buzz in her pocket, Lila took out her phone and saw a text message. "Bad news. Z is Jake's man. He got the footage of the surveillance camera when you were drunk in Australia." Seeing the text message, Lila Cox's heart sank as she panicked. However, the child she was carrying has to be his. That was the fact. So, she had no reason to panic. That thought calmed her down in the moment. At this moment, Emma knocked on the door and walked in.
"Miss Young is here? She said she brought what the Master Jake needs."
"Let her in."
Miranda quickly came in with a tablet in her hand.
"Mr. Robinson,"
she called, and then nodded to the people she had met for the first time. feeling slightly nervous. Seeing all kinds of military declarations in the study, Miranda couldn't help feeling in awe.
"Don't be nervous,"
Jake said quietly.
"Let me see."
Miranda was slightly embarrassed and handed the tablet over to Jake. However, her only acquaintance aside from her boss, Jake, caught her eye. Lila Cox was really pregnant. It was showing. Her eyes puffy, Lila looked at Miranda, seeming a bit uneasy. Miranda arched her eyebrows, looking at Lila with contempt. She knew the truth. After Jake was gone that night in Australia, she was asked to leave by Miranda. However, Miranda eventually did not have the heart to leave a drunk woman alone, and returned. When Miranda went back to Lila's room, the door was already closed. She tried to knock on the door, and even listened through the door for a while, only to hear sexual noises. Because of the soundproof materials used by the hotel, all Miranda could hear was Lila calling brother Jake. Her first reaction was that maybe Jake had after all gone back. But unsure, she called Jake to check, but found he was already at the airport. On the next day, Miranda got up early, wanting to wake Lila Cox up. Then saw a blonde Caucasian man walking quickly out of her room, zipping up his pants. By no means was that man Jake Robinson, and now Lila Cox was trying to blame Jake for her pregnancy. It was like Miranda Young did not exist. Jake found the footage and folded out the bookstand case of the tablet, facing the screen towards everyone. On the screen, the HD surveillance footage clearly showed 3 hotel room doors, and Jake Robinson's face. Jake walked to a door, knocked on it, and Lila opened the door from inside. Michael Cox saw his own daughter throwing herself at Jake Robinson, and felt utterly ashamed. She was in an outfit so slutty that he, her father, felt ashamed to be watching the footage. It was only natural that Jake would sleep with her. However, to Michael Cox's surprise, Jake pushed her away resolutely with his face stern. What was even more humiliating for Michael Cox was that Lila was crying and begging, clinging to Jake, and rubbing her breasts against him in a vulgar way. As a man, who could remain calm in front of a seduction like this? Such a disgrace to the family. Michael Cox turned around and gave Lila a stare. Shuddering and petrified, Lila hid herself behind her mother. Gazing at the screen coldly, Jake glanced at Lila. Lila became pale and gritted her teeth.
I was drunk that day. However, the child is yours.
She could be sure that the man from that night was definitely Jake Robinson. It was impossible the baby was someone else's. Impossible. Miranda Young looked full of contempt. The woman had to be shown the proof. Otherwise, she would not give up. However, Miranda could not show her disdain too obviously in front of the Cox family. The footage showed that Jake Robinson was being harassed by Lila Cox, while Miranda was dumbfounded. However, Jake was quickly pulled inside the room, and then the tablet blacked out.